All right, Rod, I want to apologize to you for the 49ers because you're about to go on this trip, and it is week 3 of the preseason. We hear that the 49ers are about to play their ones for a couple series here, and then they go out and trade Trey Lance to our mortal enemy a couple hours before the game starts. And then they go out and lay an egg on week 3 of the preseason here. Not a good day in 49er land, I don't think.
I swear, when I first saw that post, it was actually somebody had screenshotted, and I think it was SF9 or something, and I swore that they were punking me. I could not believe that that was true. That, well, I mean, let's be real. I knew that Lynch was full of horse plucky when he's talking about we could probably keep him, but if you're trying to trade somebody, and that's the last thing you say is, "Oh my God, we got to get him out of here."
Yeah, exactly.
So I saw that for what it was, but the Cowboys is an interesting situation for a lot of reasons. Number
Who is
one,
their backup quarterback, by the way?
Cooper Rush.
Okay, so Trey's going to be the 3 in Dallas?
Yep.
And he was going to be the 3 in San Francisco.
Appears so. It appears so. Yeah. That Dallas situation is interesting, like I say, for a lot of reasons. And this is not a Dallas podcast, so I won't really go into it. But Dak is, if he is not their long-term solution, Trey might get a good long look.
What has he got? 2 years left on his deal?
Well, they can extend him, which they probably won't. They've got the 5th-year option in their pocket. This is year 4, right?
For Dak, yeah. I don't even know.
Yeah. First year was Jimbo. Second year, this is 3rd. Yeah. Okay. So this is 3. So he's got one more, and then the 5th-year option.
Right.
Which I was positing that while they might not extend him, they might do something like Packers did with Jordan Love, where they didn't give him the 5th-year extension, but they gave him like a 2-year extension to for about the same money as the 5th year, but for 2 years instead of just 1, and gave him a chance to prove himself. And sitting probably is not the worst thing. I like I said, the guy who went right before him, Zach Wilson, I think Aaron Rodgers is probably the best thing that ever happened to Zach Wilson in terms of just being able to sit back. This preseason, anybody been watching Hard Knocks knows he's been basically getting all the work because Aaron Rodgers, what does he need with training camp? Well, also anybody who's watching Hard Knocks, they have these little targets around, and Aaron Rodgers is like a master at dropping that bitch in there from like 60 yards away. And I was wondering, we didn't have no targets at our training camp. Well, how come? Maybe because nobody on our team can drop it in a bucket.
Or it's like it's just like a trick. Like it's a party trick for him. He's like, oh, I can do this one thing. Remember Kyle Bowler from Cal?
Mm-hmm.
He would sit on his knee from the 50-yard line and throw it through the uprights. Like that was his party trick. I think that's Aaron Rodgers' party trick. That's just what he can do. Like he just does that on his free time. It's like a magic trick. Brock is like, he's like, yeah, I got to learn one of those things for if I ever go on that show.
Like I say, their magic trick, the punters and the kickers, they try to punt the ball and hit the upright. So like you say, I guess it may be as it's a football thing.
So this the beginning of this show that we're going to talk about this Trey thing. I mean, I'm going to let the people listening know. I'm going to be a little negative on the 49ers side because I don't think that they handled this well. And I don't want to say, I don't want to react in like a defensive way. Obviously, Trey is just a contract, just like every other player in the NFL. You trade contracts, you don't trade players. But my issue is that I sort of feel like the worst thing for Trey was last game when he came into the game and the fans just erupted for him. Because that showed the 49ers that what the fans want is a little bit different from what they're seeing in camp and what they're seeing as far as where they're going to go. So before the fans kind of create this, we want Trey stuff, I think there was a little bit of impetus for them to get him out of there sooner than later. Though at the same time, who knows if that trade has been on the table and they just decided to do it now, or who knows if they were looking for a 4 this whole time and they were only seeing 5s, and Dallas kind of scoots in there, because I don't understand trading him to Dallas. It is there are maybe interdivision, maybe the Rams and the Seahawks would be worse just for the just trading in
Cardinals
division. Cardinals, same thing. But outside of those teams, like, I literally would have rather him gone to the Raiders than gone to the Cowboys. Like, that's just for the history of this franchise. It's why the Giants and the Dodgers don't ever trade with each other. Like, that did not make any sense to me to send him to a Dallas team that historically has been one of your biggest your biggest enemies as far as the history of the NFL.
And here's the thing. And I truly believe both Kyle and John Lynch really seemed like he was going through it. I mean, it doesn't seem like this is something that he did cavalierly or that he enjoyed doing. This whole thing, I agree with you, from beginning to end has kind of been a shit show, in my opinion.
And Rick just wrote that in the comments. Just from day one, this has been a situation that, and you can even go back, right? Because they had the 12th pick. They trade all the way up to 3, and they get Trey. And it's not like Shanahan said, we got the franchise. He's very hard on QBs. You mentioned this last week when we talked about Jimmy. He's really hard on his QBs, and the QB has to deal with him and really be efficient and know the playbook. And, some of this is not Trey's fault, and it's not the 49ers' fault either. It's just bad luck. The finger injury, the other injuries that he had last year, the only game that he plays is literally in a torrential downpour in Chicago. And so if you come to any conclusions based off of that game, like, that's just unfair to Trey. But at the same time, Justin Fields made like 1 or 2 plays that Trey didn't make in that game, and Chicago wins. So I can, but it just shows you how fluky this entire thing with Trey has been. And like Rick said, and like I think you're about to say, is, the team that we root for and the team that we think is, for the most part, a pretty smart organization and has one of the best rosters. Like, we're complaining about a team that a lot of people have picked for the Super Bowl. So we're sort of like, this is the team of riches, and we're complaining about how they handled something. But I do think, we kind of have to be unbiased here and look at the full situation, which is, Kyle is supposed to be the guy who's the quarterbacks, fall onto his lap, and he's going to help make them better. I don't think that happened with Trey at all. And maybe it was never destined to happen. Like, I was reading Bill Barnwell, who, I've met before and I've had conversations with. He's a really cool guy. He's really smart.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote a long piece about Trey, which is like, the dude had like 13 starts in college at a low division, and then just did not have the snaps, which is what you've been talking about the last couple of weeks, just did not have the snaps at the pro level for you to make any kind of assumption about him. And they're trading a complete unknown, and what they have is what they've seen in training camp. And maybe he did not make that leap that they wanted, but at the same time, I didn't get to see the game, and I'll explain why. but it's not like Brandon Allen came in and opened his arms to the fans.
Or Sam Darnold. Really, it's really disappointing because it it just it's a it's frustrating because I would like to sit down with them and ask in your mind's eye when you decided that Trey was the guy over Justin Fields, because to me that's the decision. It's either Trey or Justin Fields. You don't trade all that to go up to 3 to draft Mac Jones. You just don't do that. And then, now everybody's talking about all these players that they could have drafted instead of Trey. You don't trade all that stuff, go up to 3, and then draft any of those players.
Yeah.
If those were the players you were targeting, you could have traded up higher if you wanted to, because a lot of those players would have been there 12 if that's what you were trying to do. And if you were trying to target, let's say, Patrick Surtain or Micah Parsons, which I don't know why you would do that if you got Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. But anyway, let's say that's what you wanted to do, was to trade up to draft at a position of strength. Okay, dumb to me. That sounds like some hindsight shit that you say you would do, but in the moment that doesn't make any sense. But even if you're going to do that, you wouldn't have to give up all of that to do that.
Yeah.
Once you give up all you've given up, you have clearly stated to the world that you're going to get a quarterback. So that's what it was. And the part that I don't understand is, did they really believe, after watching him play at North Dakota State in his 300 pass attempts and all that he was plug and play, that you were going to bring him in and he was going to be ready to play? That doesn't make any sense to me. People want to compare Brock to Trey. Brock played 4 years. It's a different deal. Trey was not ready to be handed the keys to the franchise, and they didn't hand them to him. So I don't know. I don't know how to apportion all of the blame. But what I do know, that it's completely unfair to dump all that shit on Trey and let Lynch and Shanahan step back and not have anything to do with it. The analogy I've been using: if your kid can't read, you can't just shit on the kid. The teacher has some responsibility in it. The parent has some responsibility in it. And obviously the child, if they aren't doing what they're supposed to do, they have responsibility into it as well. But it is not all their fault. And that's what, earlier in the week was what it was. It's like, this is all Trey's fault. It's been people like Barnwell, and I've been seeing people come out. I saw Louis Riddick was talking about the failure of the 49er brain trust in the development of Trey. And that's a story that needs to be told more, is that this was an organizational failure. And when you talk about trading them to the Cowboys, what you're trying to do, I think, is in a bad situation, you're trying to mitigate it and not make it any worse. There's a scenario where this could get a lot worse, a lot worse. If he is the dude you thought he was, and you just gave him to the Cowboys, and then he turns into that, and, there's this wild scenario again that, Brock is more Mullins than Montana, and this could be disastrous for that management team. This is the type of shit that if it goes left, they could get fired for real.
The part that I think, my buddies at Light Years. I don't know if you listen to the Warriors podcast, Light Years, with Sam Esfandieri and Andy Liu. I've actually recorded with them a couple times, and they made this comparison of Trey Lance and James Wiseman. James Wiseman gets drafted by the Warriors, number 2. They're terrible. Steph comes back, and Steph is like all world, and James Wiseman is just not he is very similar to Trey in that he barely played any college whatsoever, like because of the sanctions at Memphis, Penny Hardaway, and so you don't have a lot of tape on him. He doesn't have a lot of reps. He comes in the NBA, and he's not moving fast enough for the Warriors, who are actually having they're having a half decent season, and so then he gets hurt. Very similar to Trey. Trey gets hurt. And basically, by the time, the next year happens, the Warriors are like on a roll. And that's the year that they win the championship. And Wiseman is just he's injured. He's not really playing that much. And then so last year is kind of the make or break year for him. And they trade him before the trade deadline to get Gary Payton the second back. So the comparison is actually pretty apt because Trey Lance was kind of brought in to be the savior, and then certain things happen, and all of a sudden, Brock Purdy steps in, and he's more of Kyle's kind of guy. Now, that goes back to when you draft him, the idea is that Trey had some traits that Kyle could actually use to open up the offense in ways that it wasn't currently. And then Brock comes in and, he plays like he plays like an A+ version of Jimmy Garoppolo for those last 7 games or whatever. So we have the best version of what Jimmy was doing. And look, Brock could be better than that, right? Like you would think if he had that good of a rookie season, if he keeps getting better, him and Kyle are on the same page, by year 2, by year 3, by year 4, like we could be seeing somebody who's just mastered the offense. But what you said, the sophomore jinx can also happen. There's more tape on him. People start to know, okay, what does Brock do? Well, why does he roll out this way all the time? Like that's kind of a little bit worrisome to me. But and then what if he gets hurt? Like that's the thing that scares me the most is you see him get hit in Philly the first time that he really, really, really took a big hit like that, and the elbow goes out. So those are more my worries. And I hate it because it makes it seem like Brock is somewhat in the wrong here, and he's not. He just played some damn good football last year. So I'm hopeful that is the case. But at the same time, you almost wish that the guy that I used to listen to when I was a kid, Ralph Barbieri, used to have this saying. He used to say, 2 things can be equally true. I want Brock to ball out, and I wanted Trey to have a chance at the same time. Now, those are equally true. It couldn't happen on the field. And that is the frustration, I think, for some of the Niners fans, which makes Trey a little bit of the underdog in that sense. And so, yeah, I do think that some part of Lynch and Shanahan were like, if we let this thing go into the season, all of a sudden, if Brock doesn't play Pro Bowl football, the fans are going to be chanting for this dude, and we just don't think he's good enough. And, we don't think he's going to be as good as Brock. And that could create a little bit of frustration. Now, Brock has been great about this. He says that they're best friends. Trey, I think, has been really good, really professional. And, they gave him the day off when they told him that Sam Darnold was the number 2 and that he was going to be the number 3. So we don't know exactly how he reacted, but they were like, this is a light practice. You take the day off. And then he, supposedly he was going to come back and play tonight before he got traded. He did not play. It was Brandon Allen. So there's just a little bit of, I would say, a lack of transparency on the 49ers side. And if you're Shanahan and Lynch, you probably say, look, we got a Super Bowl winning roster. We're going with our guys. We don't really have to explain this thing. Trey didn't work out. The problem with that statement, you've been telling us for 3 years that he's doing really well. And so it's just a little bit of lack of transparency. That is football talk. That is GM talk. That is coach speak. It's not truthful necessarily. The writing was sort of on the wall for them even having Sam Darnold. I think us smart fans who kind of see between the lines knew sort of what was coming. But it doesn't make it any easier to think that, this guy didn't really get a fair shake, unfortunately. Some of it is the Niners' fault. Some of it is his fault. A lot of it is just fluky bad luck.
Yeah, and it's and I'm not here to just pound on management, but I kind of am. But that is kind of what I do. But that whole thing with Warner and those guys being out there, kind of hung out there to answer questions
Oh yeah.
about Trey after that, and then this whole dog and pony show that um, Tim Ryan and Greg Papa have been trying to pull, were trying to tell me that Sam Darnold is better than Trey Lance. I mean, okay, if you say so, I'm telling you, I counted 4 times that dude threw the ball behind his receivers. He is a pick waiting to happen. So, well, they've got what they wanted, and now they have to live with it. It better work. I know it
I
better
mean,
work.
and that's how it works, right? You have to
It
live with it. And I
work.
think the thing that I'm frustrated with, right? Like James Wiseman from the Warriors goes to Detroit. I'm like, great. I'm rooting for that dude. I want to see
Mm-hmm.
that dude succeed. I got rookie cards. I believed in him. I want to see him be a good basketball player. If Trey Lance goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars to sit behind Trevor Lawrence, I root my ass off for Trey. I know I've interviewed Shad Khan's son, Tony, who Shad Khan's the owner. Tony Khan, who he's in charge of All Elite Wrestling. Who's the secondary company to WWE. He also works with the Jaguar. I know him a little bit. I've interviewed him. I've talked to him. I've seen him before. So I would root for. I'd be like, oh yeah, Trey's on the Jaguars. I'm in. I don't have a second team, but almost all of a sudden I have a little bit of rooting. Him going to the Cowboys.
Can't do
I don't
it.
want any. I don't want like
Can't do it.
I cannot root for those dudes. So it's a little
See
frustrating
that
for me.
but I have experience with this because Jerry went to the Raiders.
Yes.
Ronnie went to the Raiders.
Yes. Roger went to the
Roger went to the
Raiders.
Raiders. And there have been other lesser players who have made that transition.
Charles Haley went to the Cowboys.
Yeah. But yeah. I never stopped rooting for Jerry Rice. I root for Jerry Rice playing golf or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. But like you said, you quoted Barbieri, 2 things can be true. I can root for Jerry Rice or Trey Lance, and I can also root for the Dallas Cowboy plane to crash. I mean, both things can be true. But yeah, I can't. It's really a tricky situation because I can't abide rooting for those dudes at all, or even watching those dudes.
Yeah. That was just the thing that surprised me. And so, okay. So the optics of trading Trey after what they had to give, like this is not even about whether or not you like Trey. It's the optics of the trade in which they traded up to get him. And, you trade those picks, those number ones. I think they also traded like a 3.
Mm-hmm. So it's 2 ones and a swap, basically.
2 runs and a swap. And I think they've already paid 2 of those picks, so they only got like 1 left, right? Of the ones.
Oh, who? No, they've
so they paid them all off.
Right.
Okay, so it's the trading up for it, and what you get out of that whole thing is now a 4th round pick, and so that is a bad deal. No matter who that 4th round pick, maybe that 4th round pick turns into like another Fred Warner, then you're like, okay, that's not that big of a deal. But so the optics of that pick, you lose that deal badly. I was also reading Barnwell, and I think he said out of like the last 9 first round picks, only 2 have really worked out for the Niners. The actually what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Where they pick well is in the middle of the draft and not necessarily in the first round of the draft. That's where they actually excel. So my thing is, if you're going to trade this dude, you better have Bosa's press release ready because you need some good, especially after tonight's performance, you need some good news for this team because these fans, me included, you're in the NFC Championship. Last couple, the last few years, you were in the Super Bowl 4 years ago. you're sort of like, you don't want to be the franchise that is knocking on the door and can never get through. And so this year is a big year for 49er fans. So you have this negativity with this Trey thing, and it's, it's just all over camp, right? The entire story of camp is really the Trey Lance story. Like, that's the biggest story in camp. And so now you finally lose him. You got to have Nick. Nick's got to be on the door. Like, that press release better be out there Monday, because the longer that thing goes, and then you add that to the Trey thing, these fans are going to be really frustrated, and the expectations are high. Like, they should be high. The Niners have been knocking at the door. I already mentioned the only thing stopping Shanahan from being a Hall of Fame head coach is the fact that not won the big one, and he's not really been the quarterback whisperer that people thought he was going to be. He's gotten good seasons out of RG3. He's gotten good seasons out of Kirk Cousins. He's gotten good seasons out of Jimmy Garoppolo. Matt Ryan had an MVP season. Well, he was the offensive coordinator. I do get that. But Matt Ryan was also a really good player before Kyle got there. This is really his opportunity to cement that status as, who he's supposed to be. And this is his opportunity. I think this is a vulnerable situation for Lynch and Shanahan, only because the expectations are so high. And I expect the Niners to be good. Are they Super Bowl championship winning good? Like, that's to be decided. But them, the Eagles, and the Chiefs are kind of like the three teams that people are thinking are Super Bowl possibilities. So the expectation is high. And, this is really, it's kind of, it's bullseye time for them. They need to show that this team is ready to go, because if not, then what you said earlier, which is, man, the idea that they could possibly be responsible for being fired or whatever based off of this. I don't think this Trey thing is that situation, but the expectations are high. You dealt with this thing kind of badly. You kind of need some good stuff going into the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it's really precarious. The fact is, we are really top heavy. We've got a lot of stars, but our depth really isn't there. And I don't know. I just don't hear a whole lot of people talking about it. Everybody's like, it's going to be fine, but it looks way different without Nick out there. And you want to tell me that he doesn't have any leverage? Okay, but I keep going back to that analogy you made about Emmitt Smith. I think that's a real thing. If we go in there, if he doesn't sign, and we go in there to Pittsburgh and get our doors blown off, and then we go to New York or go wherever it is we go next. I know we don't play. We play New York the third game.
Yeah,
I know
the first home game is New York on Thursday.
Yeah, this could be. I think we're a good team, and I think we are a Super Bowl contender. But there are scenarios where this thing goes sideways, and with all of the other disappointments, as good as we've been, on top of now this this colossal flop with the picks and moving off a trade. I mean, and then we just don't know what's going on with Jed. This is a very, very, I feel really, really uneasy going into this season. I am not as confident as I would have hoped I would be. And like you say, that's why this doesn't make any sense just from a PR standpoint. You got to get Nick signed.
Yeah.
Because as bad as I feel now, if like you said, if they came out there and said, and I know, like you said, I think you're right because of how the media works. There's no way in hell they can come out here on Friday afternoon and say we signed Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. But first thing Monday morning, I would expect there to be a press release or Adam Schefter tweet that Nick Bosa is the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. And then all of a sudden, the sky's open,
Yeah,
champagne popping, and we've got the order has been restored. Everything, there was no problem, and that's what we need right now. We really need some good news. We need
So
some good news.
the one thing I want to say is the thing about Trey, and we'll talk about the game here in a second. I'll explain why I didn't get to watch it, but drafting a quarterback in the first round does not mean that quarterback is going to be a star. We have Sam Darnold on this roster, right? You mentioned Zach Wilson. Trevor Lawrence is probably a budding star. Justin Fields, electric runner. You want to see the passing game improve on him. Still, I'll take Mac. Carson Wentz. I'll take Trey Lance still over Mac Jones today, right? Today.
I don't know that Mac Jones is better than Brady Zapier, whatever the hell that guy's name is. So yeah.
But so the point is that just because you draft a quarterback in the first round doesn't mean that quarterback is going to pan out. So this is not about, well, the Niners didn't develop Trey into this star. That is not what this is about to me. It's that Trey didn't really have a chance because of the couple things that we did, and the Niners. I don't think that the last 2 years they handled him quite correctly, and some of it is when your head coach and your GM are your most vocal people. There's no. Not to say there's no one sticking up for the players necessarily, but I would like it to be a little bit more balanced in that, I would like to hear non-coach speak about Trey. Now, whether that's 49ers PR, whether that's, but even the announcers, we mentioned the announcers, they are the mouthpiece for the team. And so it just seemed like these last 2 years, even though Trey was going to be the number one quarterback last year, it just seems like that there was just this disbelief in his ability to actually win games. And it was almost like, we're going to prove to you that he's not the guy and we have to find the guy, which is unfortunate because I just don't think he had the chance. Now, Shanahan will probably say, yeah, last year was going to be his year and then he got hurt and we couldn't do anything about that. Yeah, I get it. The ankle injury was just so fluky and whatever happened and they made they made chicken salad out of chicken shit with that quarterback situation last year. Awesome. Garoppolo came in, played well. Second he gets hurt, Brock comes in and plays excellent, and they salvage that season. But it was just like there's just been this tone of that, Trey is not the guy, even though we drafted him to be the guy almost since he was picked. And I just don't,
it's like they have buyer's remorse almost immediately.
I don't like that. Like, give the kid a chance. And again, it reminds me of the Wiseman thing. My son, Brian, who does who does the death lineup, he's like, same thing with Joey Bart, who's the Giants catcher, who's the number 2 pick. Like, it just seems like these guys are just set up to fail. And it's like, the teams are good, so we it's like the people who we pick, they can't, they can't go through the normal growing pains that other picks go through because they're expected to be great because they got to keep up with everyone else on the roster, and that is just unfortunate. The expectation is unfortunate. What I will say is my worry was that the fan base were going to give up on Trey, and one of my favorite follows on Twitter, her name is she works for I want to say the Monterey station, the Bay Area station. I forget her name. Her name slips right now. I'll find it at some point and maybe I'll share it. But she said, what is it about Trey that causes people to to be negative about him because he's been so professional? And that question is a little bit of a loaded question because there's always this in the Bay Area, it's a little bit better, but there are racial undertones whenever you draft an African American quarterback because of just these old these old coach speaks from 30 years ago that people want to latch onto. But the other thing is that when you draft someone number 3, and we talked about this is quarterback university, right? The expectation is so high for the quarterback, and this is what killed Alex Smith until he was able to develop a little bit. It's just the expectation is so high, and it's so unfortunate that you don't really get the chance to sit behind somebody. Like, how long did Aaron Rodgers sit before he
5
played,
years.
right? And you just don't have that opportunity for Trey. And the answer or the question is why doesn't he have that same opportunity? Because they didn't have to trade him. Maybe next year or maybe the year after, where this 5th year in the deal, you kind of have to worry about that. But there was nothing that, unless he was promised that if you're not the number 2 pick, we will trade you, unless that was something that they worked out with the agent, I just don't understand why the need was necessary.
I think you hit on something with that. It's one of those things that you constantly have to remind yourself, and I'm constantly reminding myself and reminding those around me that the internet is not a real place.
No.
People who are there, it's a different deal. So you interact there as a 49er fan, and you hear all the negativity, and then you see what happened at that game, and it was last week, and it was wild to see the support Trey had, in the stands. People were like really, really rooting for him, and that is completely different than the impression you would get if the only information you had was what was happening on Facebook and Twitter. It's just that you do not get that kind of energy at all. So that's interesting, and I hadn't thought about it, but maybe you're right. Maybe that did play a role in it, because it just makes it more pressure packed than already being QB1 does for Brock, or QB2 for Darnold. The fact that if this dude is the 3rd quarterback and he's got all of this groundswell of support, if we slip at all, then we've got this whole jackpot going on of, why isn't Trey quarterback 2, or why isn't Trey getting a chance to be? And I mean, I guess the best way, if you stated you believe in Brock, and I guess the best way to evidence that faith is just to go ahead and go all in with this triumvirate. And like I say, I'm a 49er fan, so I hope it works out. But I can see scenarios where it doesn't, and like I say, I just don't, unless that, which your hypothesis about the fan support is a real thing. Other than that, I really haven't heard any real. I mean, you say $5 million against the cap. Okay, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah. If you're gonna tell me you have cap relief, then you better use that cap relief to sign Nick Bosa. That's all that matters.
It's so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to trade him. I think that the downside outweighs any benefit that you get from moving on from him.
Yeah.
Because you still have, even if he's here and even if he's the QB3, you still have the opportunity of benefiting from his upside. There is a possibility that someone is hurt in a temporary type situation, and he comes in and plays well and increases his value, so that even if you still decide that you want to move on, you have now been put in a better position leverage wise to extract something more than a 4th round pick. Because hell, I have been saying all along that if you just keep him, you can mess around and get a third round compensatory pick. So you would figure that they were holding out for at least that. But again, as I've said all along, I know what the 49ers want, and I know what the 49er fans want. They want to be somehow made whole. But if I'm whoever, Team X, why the hell am I gonna, back up the truck and give you even a Carson Wentz deal?
Yeah, Niners have no leverage whatsoever in this deal.
For what? At least, I mean, even Carson Wentz, say what you want about him before he got hurt that year that they won a Super Bowl. He was an MVP candidate. He never played at that level again, but that was the pitch that that's what the Eagles were selling, and that's what they sold to his former offensive coordinator, is that you can help him retrieve his by past days of glory or some shit. But yeah, the 49ers didn't have no narrative to spin like that with Trey.
Yeah.
They were just stuck if they were going to trade him. And again, a 4th round draft pick is better than cutting him outright. I mean, now that would just, if you say how could it be worse? I guess that would be worse if you waived him.
Yep.
that would be worse.
So the person I follow on Twitter, KSBW Drea, she works for KSBW 8 in Salinas. She's a sports anchor in Salinas. But she's a fun follow, diehard Barry sports
for
fan.
Salinas.
And yeah, exactly. So here's what I will say about this, though. We're a little gloom and doom for this podcast so far. This podcast is called We Want Winners because Coach Mike Singletary was dropping his drawers in the locker room because of just frustration with his football team. So I want to say that this organization over the last 4 years, head and shoulders above where we started this web, this Facebook group, originally Facebook group, and now podcast. So the expectations are high, and they should be high. As 49er fans, you should have high expectations based not only off of the historical, first team to win 5 Super Bowls, but also because, the team has been pretty darn good for the last few years, and you're kind of hoping that if all things sort of crystallize and you have this, this once in a lifetime season, injuries are low and stuff, you could see them going far. The flip side is, and we've talked about this, is the offensive line doesn't protect Brock. He's running around like a chicken with his head cut off. Injuries happen, and they're not as good as we thought. I mean, even last year before they got CMC, they were a pretty average football team. So I think that they're going to be good. I don't, them trading Trey does not mean that all of a sudden I want bad things to happen. That is not it at all.
Not at all.
I just did not like the way this was handled. And I saw Shanahan today say that, he feels like he failed Trey. Okay. Nice to fall on the sword today, but we've been hearing otherwise, from the organization about him and his development and everything. So it's almost like, the old Bob Arum saying, yesterday I told you a lie. Today I'm telling you the truth. That's the frustrating part for me, is like just the coach speak. I'm just like, come on, just like be real. Like we know what's going on.
Why would you just? I mean, and I get it. Kyle gets asked questions all the time, and there are times when he just doesn't say anything. I'm just not going to answer that. But I mean, I guess I get from his perspective. I guess he can't just no comment his way through the season. But if you're asking him questions of a sensitive nature, look, man, I how am I going? I can't tell you the inner workings of what's going on with my football team. It's just how would you like it if your boss came out and was telling me about the corrective action that you guys just had yesterday afternoon about some, there's just certain things as a boss, and I know it's different that his employees are front facing individuals, but still, I've seen it. Coaches can't just get out and coach their team through the media. It's just it breeds distrust, and coaches that do that just don't last long. So, but I don't know. I mean, if we don't win here soon, for all the great things Kyle has done, at a certain point, he's gonna be in an Andy Reid situation in Philly where it has been great, but I hate that cliche, can't win the big one. But it kind of is a real thing that maybe as great a coach as you are, it's just not a fit anymore here. And maybe we need a different voice.
Ultimate prove it season for both these guys now. They
Yeah.
they put some pressure on themselves, and that's probably what they want. They want the risk, and they want the what this stuff means as far as the pressure, and it just means that they're that there's high expectations and that they have a good roster. So okay, so the reason why I didn't watch the game is because I have Hulu Live TV, and I subscribe or I follow the 49ers actual team. Now, that gets me the recordings of every regular season game. And what I learned for this season in preseason game 1, that it didn't record the preseason game. So the first game 1 and game 2, I realized before the game started and I set the recording. I forgot to do that today. So I didn't get the recording. What I may have to do is I may have to get that NFL app so that I can watch the replay on the NFL app and at least just see what happened. But you watched it, and I was looking at some of the stuff that happened, and I know that when Brock was in, they did score. When Brock was out, they scored in the third quarter. Was that field goals or was that actual touchdown?
They scored a touchdown and could not, we didn't have a field goal kicker, so we
2-point conversion.
Went for 2-point conversions. Yeah, Brock looked good. Debo looked great. JP looked great. Looked really good. And TDP looked good. I mean, our running backs, we're stacked because those two dudes are good, and we all know that CMC is a closer.
Those two dudes combined for 120 yards on 19 carries today.
They are really good. Yeah, Debo looks like he's in midseason form. It was interesting to see how the first series played out because they were talking. I think it was Jennifer Chan Lee, or I'm sorry, I don't know, I messed up her name. But anyway, she had posted that Wednesday was Debo Day. He had like 7 straight completions or something like that, and then they went to him like immediately. Brock was like, it was like they were looking to get Debo started, which is not a bad idea if you can get him going early. And then you got those other counter punches. Ayuk had a big play. The running game was good. I mean, we are stacked. As long as there aren't any injuries, like you said, with the offensive line, and we're able to keep our frontline guys healthy, it's hard for me to believe a whole team isn't a contender for everything. But it's such a tricky balance that a few injuries here or there, and we could be that same 500 team we were, or under 500 team we were before CMC got here. It's just a real to me it seems like a real delicate situation that we could be really good and a break here, a break there, and it could be a really disappointing season. But I guess you could say that about every team every year. But yeah, but it's kind of like you said, this is it's kind of a bummer day. So I guess that's why I'm feeling doom or gloom. But Like I say, Monday morning, if I wake up and Nick has signed, all will be right with the world, and it'll be like today never happened.
Exactly. Do you know? I think I've told you this before. Jennifer Lee Chan, who's the NBC Sports Bay Area reporter. Do you know that in an earlier lifetime for her, she was a professional wrestler?
You told me that. I remember that you told me. That is wild.
Women
What
of
like
Wrestling in the year 2000. She was.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Wow.
she was a wrestler. I love that trivia about her because what a wild change in job, right? Like to be a performer on television and then to go into reporting. I think it's pretty cool.
It would be awesome if one day on their podcast she like hit Mayako over the head with a chair. I'm sure she could take him.
So, we in the preseason games so far, we've done this thing where we go, who are the people who kind of stood out and who are the people who stood out, but in a negative way. I didn't get to see the game, so I don't have anybody for you. But was there anybody who kind of was on your, who jumped off the map there?
It was really, I pretty much mentioned them all. Purdy looked good. Debo looked great. The two running backs looked really good. Flanagan Fowles, I think, has, Tim Ryan seems to think that Oren Burke is still going to be the starter. I think that Fowles has done enough that he should be the guy getting those snaps, but what do I know? Guys who Darnold was kind of not impressive. He made some really good throws. But that's New York Jets. Sam Darnold, he'll make great plays, but then he just, inexplicably just makes some horrible, poor decisions. I mean, and they haven't, really turned into turnovers here yet, but I don't know, man. It's just a matter of time with that dude. Brandon Allen did not look very good. Who else? Tay Martin had a couple of bad plays. I gave him half a drop because the ball did hit him in the hands, but Darnold threw it behind him, so he had to kind of
turn around
and it hit him in the hands, but he was, it's one of them deals where he's going completely back the other way and trying to, so it was kind of his fault because, I know NFL receivers always say if it hits him in the hands, they're supposed to catch it, but it could have been a better pass. And then he had a offensive pass interference, so it wasn't a really good day for him. There was an Austin Bryant sighting. He made a couple of really good plays.
And I saw Anthony Miller got in the game.
Mm-hmm. He played okay. And then Javon Kinlaw, he was that dude that pile on the pile dude where other dudes would make plays and then he would
He
flash
comes in at the end
and jump on the pile and make it look like, and he get up and celebrate. Like, man, that was old boy's play. Finnegan Fowles made that play. What are you doing? But yeah, so yeah, man, I'm gonna be real. Get that app and watch it if you want, but if you want to
not
save
great.
those
Wasn't
3
great.
hours of your life, you can go ahead and you could, you can just watch the highlights on ESPN. And
Yeah, I'm hoping that maybe they make it, they put it on demand for me, which is possible as well. What about the offensive line?
It was the running game looked really good. There wasn't a terrible lot of pressure, and again, I don't know, with the Chargers, I never do such a deep dive that I know what we're looking at in terms of the opponents. Like I never even consult the depth chart as to who is playing and who's not. But there was no leaky pressures, and they were dominant at times. They were really gashing them and giving those running backs really big holes. Our defensive line looked pretty bad. The Chargers were just running it at will on us, and it's something that I harped on all last year. and I know Hargrave didn't play and Armstead didn't play really. But when we go up against those good teams with good running games, it's a problem that our interior, and even with Hargrave, as good as he was in Philly, um, you could run up the gut on them too. I mean, it's just, his skill set is more pass rush, and we're gonna be. And I think Tim Ryan is right. I can't remember since I've been a 49er fan, even going back to like BY, he wasn't as an explosive as athlete as Hargrave is. I can't remember a pass rusher as dynamic as Hargrave on the interior
from the inside.
So it's just gonna be it's gonna look different. But those teams, if we want to be where we want to be, teams like the Chiefs and the Eagles and the and Detroit, and even hell, after what we saw from Atlanta last year when they put two bills up on us, we need to be stout in the middle and just not let people come and push us around the way. And it's the classic thing as the boxers that counter punchers don't really like to be counter punched. We like to go play bully ball and beat people up, and punch them in the mouth. It looks like we don't really like to get punched in the mouth and just play a nasty style of football. We want to go out there and rush the passer and can be pretty and make plays and do all that. It remains to be seen if we can, up front, if we can, win a fist fight because it's not looking good. So we'll see though. We'll see. We have not seen, the good news is we really have not seen our ones for an extended period of time. So I'm sure that will look very different.
So Jake Moody was scratched for the game. He has, is it a hammy? Is that his issue?
I thought it was a quad.
Quad. Okay, quad. My cousin Zane Gonzales was going to get all the glory today,
and his calf tightened up,
and then he got scratched. So, do we think that Kyle Shanahan is going to go to the league office and say that 49ers need to be able to take 3 kickers, man?
Well, what happened to the Money Mitch experiment? Or even better, how come we didn't just let Juice kick? I mean, he can do everything else. I mean, I have no doubt.
What
he
about
can make an extra point.
Who's that? The fullback that they drafted? That's like the
Coletto.
Yeah, they should have let him kick.
Or and I know it's preseason, but I'm sure Christian McCaffrey can kick a field goal.
Oh, I'm sure.
So if this happens in the regular season, it wouldn't surprise me if Christian kicked a 45-yarder to win.
Oh yeah. I mean, we thought he was gonna play quarterback last year against the Eagles. Like, let him throw.
Let Christian cook.
Okay, so you're about to go on vacation. And I hope that your vacation, your Saturday is a little bit better than your Friday as you get going on your flight.
Well, and I'm gonna bring my mic, so
okay,
I'm gonna see what the internet does. And
what's the time difference for us?
I am 11 hours ahead of you.
Okay.
So if ever we're able to hook up, it'll be early morning for me. And like in the afternoon for you.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and even if we just, I guess we could be we're having a production meeting online, but if we could just, do 10 or 15 minutes after the cuts have happened
Tuesday, right?
We get the roster and we, just your thoughts, my thoughts, and because I just think this is gonna be, maybe it'll end up being much ado about nothing, but I think it's gonna be a rip-roaring time.
Yeah, it might be a little crazy.
Yeah, so if we can, that's cool. If
not, we'll try. We'll see if we can do it. But
if not, I'll be back before our next scheduled meeting. So
yeah. Game the Niners play on. Let's see. I had this pulled up and now I lost it. They play the Steelers in week 1 of the NFL on September 10th at 10 a.m. and then they go in week 2 to the Rams. So that's who they play week 2. So yeah, September 10th. We're about 2 weeks and a day away from the season starting. So
I
coming
can't
quick.
wait. We got fantasy drafts
Yep.
coming up this week. Good luck to everybody. Draft well. You can't win your league on draft day, but you can you can really handicap yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So get you a reputable cheat sheet if nothing else. I mean, there's so many more resources to be informed on fantasy. I know I go overboard, but take some time, give yourself a chance. I know most people probably don't take it as seriously as I do, but it's more fun. Don't I hate when people like quit after like week 12 because their team stinks.
My first foray into fantasy football was senior year in high school. Same year the Niners won their last Super Bowl.
Whew.
I was doing this stuff by hand. All of the stats were me looking in the sports page and grabbing all the stats and doing it by hand. And that was the beginning of the league that I still play in, which I invited you to be in this year. So that is a long time ago that we've been doing. Now, we went from me doing it by hand, then I would pay like $50 a year to have this computer program that would do it. And then I would send out newsletters because not everyone was online. And then finally everyone was online and we could do it.
It's so much easier for league managers these days.
Yes. All right, that is going to be it from here. So, Rod, I want to wish you a very safe and happy vacation, and we'll try and connect if we can, and possibly do a short show for folks. And then season will be here before we know it, and we'll be doing these every week post game, as long as as long as we're not going to the game, which I do actually want to go to at least one this year. And if we could go to one together, that would be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yep.
So for Rod, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.